Let me ask you a question before anything else. Why does the money go into your account, but peace doesn't come along with it? The paycheck arrives, the notification pops up, the relief lasts a few seconds, and then comes the same old feeling. Worry, rushed decisions, bills speaking louder than conscience. But what if I told you that the problem was never the amount you earn? And yes, what do you do in the first few minutes after receiving it? The Bible never treated money as something superficial. On the contrary, it reveals that a salary is much more than a monthly reward. It is a spiritual thermometer. Money is a silent mirror reflecting your priorities, emotions, and vision for the future. How you handle it can either strengthen your life or sabotage everything without you realizing it. And the most impressive thing is that this happens even to people who pray, work hard, and believe in God. If you feel like you always start the month chasing after money, but never getting ahead of it, this content could change the way you look at finances forever. So stick with me until the end. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. The salariat's not the source, he is the answer. A response to the time invested, the skills developed, the doors that opened, and especially to the provision that came before you even realized it. When the Bible speaks of sustenance, it never begins with money. It begins with invisible origin that sustains the visible. That's why so many people earn more and continue living in fear, while others earn less and live in security. The difference isn't in the amount of money that comes in, but in the awareness of where this comes from. When you treat your salary as your source of income, everything changes for the worse. Money begins to carry a weight it was never meant to bear. It becomes security, identity, rest, hope. And then any threat to your salary transforms into a threat to your peace. A single delay, an unexpected expense, a moment of instability, and your heart collapses. Not because of a lack of declared faith, but because in practice, money has taken the place it never belonged to. The Bible repeatedly shows that God does not reveal himself as the one who pays wages, but as the one who provides salary is just one of the means. When you understand this, something profound happens. Money stops being a demanding master and becomes a functional servant. It ceases to dictate your decisions and begins to obey a greater purpose. Notice how this changes the first day after payment. If the salary is the source of income, the thought process is, how much can I spend before it runs out? If salary is the answer, the question changes completely. What is this resource being called upon to fulfill now? Do you see the difference? One question arises from anxiety, the other arises from perspective. Many people enter the month trying to protect their money, when in fact they should be aligning the heart, because the problem isn't losing money. The problem is losing direction. And direction never comes from the bank balance. It comes from the understanding of the person behind the provision. When that awareness is lost, the money starts sending confusing signals. Fear of spending, guilt when investing, impulse buying, regret later. It's not a lack of planning. It's a lack of foundation. The Bible is subtle, yet extremely clear. Trusting in visible resources is always easier than trusting in invisible sources. That's why this principle is so challenging. It challenges pride, the feeling of control, the idea that everything depends exclusively on your effort. Yes, work is important. Yes, discipline is necessary. But when salary becomes the source of income, the heart hardens. When it is recognized as the answer, the heart finds rest, and better decisions begin to emerge almost naturally. This is where many don't realize it, but something spiritual happens. The way you view your salary defines whether you enter the month reacting or governing. Those who react are constantly putting out fires. Those who govern make conscious choices, even under pressure. And this doesn't stem from advanced financial techniques, but from a profoundly biblical change of mindset. When money ceases to be the primary source of your control, it loses its power to dominate you emotionally. You begin to see limits without feeling scarcity, opportunities without despair, and even challenges without panic. Because your security is not concentrated in a number, but in a principle. And principles, unlike salaries, don't get delayed, don't disappear, and don't break. That's why it all starts here. Before discussing decisions, planning, or practical choices, it was necessary to establish this foundation. Because those who err at the beginning become confused along the way. And now that this foundation is clear, it becomes much easier to understand why. Right after receiving one's salary, certain actions seem harmless, but carry profound consequences that almost no one notices at the time. Few people admit it, but a large part of financial decisions don't stem from reason. They stem from current emotional state. The paycheck arrives, and with it comes a feeling of entitlement. As if that amount authorized internal compensations. I deserve it. It was a tough month. I worked too hard. Nobody sees my effort. And without realizing it, money ceases to be a tool and becomes emotional remedy. The Bible never treats money as a solution to inner emptiness. On the contrary, it constantly warns against seeking in created things what can only be supplied by the Creator. But in everyday life, this happens in a very subtle way. It doesn't start with obvious excesses. It starts with small emotional concessions that seem harmless, but gradually create a dangerous pattern. The problem with emotional money isn't the spending itself. It's the hidden motive behind it all: buying to alleviate anxiety, spending to compensate for frustration, paying in installments to feel a sense of belonging, consuming to feel valued. In those moments, money isn't solving anything. It's just postponing an internal confrontation. And everything that's postponed emotionally comes back later, with interest. Notice how this manifests itself right after payday. There's a strange, almost automatic urge to spend quickly, as if holding on to money creates discomfort. This happens because for many, idle money exposes feelings they prefer not to face: insecurity, fear of the future, a sense of inadequacy. So spending becomes a way to silence these emotions, even if only for a short time. The Bible is very clear in showing that the human heart has a natural tendency to seek quick relief. And money, being accessible and socially accepted, becomes one of the most used anesthetics. But anesthesia doesn't cure. It only prevents the pain from being felt while the problem continues to grow inside. If this content is making sense to you so far, pause for a second, leave a like now, because that really helps the channel reach more people. And take the opportunity to subscribe, because the next videos will delve even deeper into these principles that almost no one teaches. When payday arrives, many people's first reaction is to act, to resolve everything quickly, to buy now, to decide now, to commit now. But waiting breaks this automatic impulse. It creates an uncomfortable silence where the heart begins to speak louder. And that's precisely why so many people avoid waiting. Because waiting exposes whether that decision stems from necessity or anxiety. The Bible repeatedly shows that decisions made in the heat of the moment often carry long-lasting consequences. Immediacy almost always exacts an invisible price later. Therefore, the principle of waiting is not passivity. It is self-control applied to money. It means, I can, but I will observe. I have the resources, but I will discern. I can do it now, but should I do it now? This principle completely changes how you get through the month. Those who don't wait always live on the edge because they anticipate pleasures and postpone consequences. Those who learn to wait create space, leeway, clarity. And this doesn't happen by chance. Waiting reorganizes priorities. What seemed urgent loses its power. What seemed indispensable becomes merely convenient. And what truly matters remains. There is something profoundly spiritual in this process. The Bible teaches that wisdom calls for pauses, not haste. When you wait, you give space for consciousness to take control that was previously in the hands of impulse. And financial impulse is almost never neutral. It carries emotions, comparisons, fears, and expectations that have not been filtered. How many bad financial decisions could have been avoided if there had only been a waiting period? Not a period to accumulate more money, but a period to cool the heart, because many purchases don't survive a good night's sleep. Many decisions don't withstand a few days of reflection. Waiting acts as a silent test. If it still makes sense afterward, perhaps it's legitimate. If it disappears, it was just a passing emotion. The Bible never says you should deny yourself everything you desire. It teaches that desires need to be governed. And governing desires takes time. The problem is that the current system was built precisely to eliminate that space. Easy installment plans, instant credit, limited offers, artificial scarcity. Everything is designed to prevent you from waiting, because those who wait make better decisions, and better decisions don't always favor impulsive consumption. Money stops serving only the present and begins to answer a much deeper question. Where is this leading me? This is where the principle of long-term vision comes in, a principle that the Bible treats with absolute seriousness, but that the modern world almost ignores. Long-term vision is not about accumulating for the sake of accumulating. It's about intentionality. It's about understanding that every salary carries a silent potential to strengthen the future or to postpone it. Nothing is neutral. That which doesn't build consumes. That which doesn't point forward keeps you trapped in repetitive cycles. And the Bible is clear in showing that cycles without vision generate weariness, not progress. Those who only worry about making ends meet fall into a dangerous trap. It always seems like things are about to improve, but they never truly do. The problem isn't just income, but the lack of a vision. Without a plan, money dwindles quickly because it has no defined purpose. It comes in, solves emergencies, satisfies momentary desires, and disappears. Not because there's little of it, but because it was not targeted. The Bible teaches that where there is no vision, people scatter. This also applies to salary. Without vision, it is scattered across small decisions that individually seem harmless, but together build a fragile future. With vision, even modest values gain strength because they become part of something bigger. The difference is not in how much one earns, but in what is the point of earning. When you start applying a long-term vision, your salary changes its function. It ceases to be merely for maintenance and becomes a strategy. Some decisions no longer make immediate sense, but begin to make structural sense. You start to realize that not every sacrifice is a loss, and not every comfort is a gain. Some renunciations today are, in fact, seeds planted for tomorrow. Everything we've seen so far reveals a simple but profound truth. Salary has never been just money. It carries direction, reveals priorities, and points to the kind of future you are silently building. When you understand that it is not the origin, you stop using it to suppress emotions, learn to wait, align your decisions spiritually, and begin to see beyond the month. Something changes inside. Money stops generating anxiety and begins to obey purpose. The big question isn't how much you earn, but what your salary is saying about you, because in the end, biblical prosperity isn't about constantly chasing after more. It's about walking with clarity, peace, and vision. If this content resonated with you, leave a like now to strengthen this message, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos, and share it with someone who needs to hear this.